Hey, deserving listeners, 90-Day Fiancé. If you ever find that I say something for about a minute or so that you think would be good for TikTok and YouTube Shorts, send me an email because it does really help. I think 99% of the shorts and TikToks that I make are at the suggestion of y'all. So go to the website, send me an email through there, and then give me a timestamp and that kind of thing, and you can really help me out. So, and thank you to those of you who have done that. But let's watch.
Time at the housewarming party. I wasn't there for that.
No, it wasn't the most ideal ending, that's for sure.
Well, it's like you say, oh, everything's great because Charlie's not here, everything's calm, and then there's a huge fight.
No, that's not what we said.
All right, so his tactic seems to be to try to tear down the opposition, to try to return things to normal. Also, I think he has a lot of anger on the surface, or at least it seems there, and we've seen evidence of that in the past, which makes me think he has a lot to be angry about that has nothing to do with what he actually will express his anger about. If I was to take a guess, based on previous experience with other people like this, he feels very hurt about a lot of things. Okay, so who knows? But I wouldn't be surprised if Charlie had significant pain throughout his life around abandonment and rejection and making him feel like he isn't good enough or something. I don't know. And early in life, he discovered that the only way to express himself within a toxic masculine culture is to get angry, which of course perpetuates other humiliation. And then he can't cope with that, so he starts to drink. I don't know. Who knows? I'm just speculating. Then, because of his drinking and his behavior, because he's actually trying to express himself in this very dysfunctional way around his pain of rejection, he ends up being ultimately absolutely rejected from the family, and he's even more hurt and even more angry. And as soon as he gets a chance around his family, he's coming out of the gate with that very ingrained pattern neurologically for him, which is hurt, anger, attack, hurt, anger, attack, hurt, anger, attack. And I wonder if the family in the past would just give into it. And now they're questioning that. And so I think I don't know, who knows, but there's a possibility, if that's even remotely possibly true, that he's trying to get things back under his control. He's trying to get things back to normal by resorting to the old tape. Also, we hear him also kind of guilt tripping. Like, oh, I heard you had a good time at the party and I wasn't invited, housewarming party. And maybe he learned that from the family enmesh system. Guilt tripping is a major and the central homeostatic mechanism to keep everyone in place. So I don't know. It's just interesting. He's coming out of the gate so hot.
I don't know who
We've
said
never
that.
said that.
That's what you told me.
Yeah, that's what you said.
No,
Oh, really, Mother?
I don't remember saying that. I mean, we did talk about Charlie. No, that is true.
I still feel like there's some things that you have done.
Okay, interesting. So Charlie is actually giving everyone an opportunity to speak more in the open about their concerns, maybe about him. It also could be a move to try to, because he knows that people won't really be differentiated. And so he's hoping that I don't know, who knows what his strategy is, but he is, at least on the surface, saying, y'all were talking about me, and what's up with that, essentially. And the mom is like, I didn't, and the mom actually was one of the people that said that. The other sister who's sitting next to Charlie is like being kind of, she's like staying out of it, which I don't blame her. It's a tense situation. But then this other sister across the table is the one seemingly that speaks for the family, even under tense situations, for better or for worse. I think this time it might be for the better. She's just like, well, Mom and everyone else seems to be avoiding it, but yes, we do still have some concerns. So I think that might be healthy-ish. But previously, in the last episode, she was also voicing a family message of, I hope Andre gets deported. She even looks to her sister with, I don't remember that scene, but she's like, well, hopefully he does get deported. And she looks to her sister with this smile as if to say, like, right, we're all on board. I don't know if I'm reading that right, but maybe this sister is the speaker for everyone's true thoughts. And families will often have someone elected to that role, particularly if there is dysfunction. The more dysfunction there is in a family, the more divergent roles people will have. The irresponsible one needs to be more irresponsible, and the responsible one needs to be more responsible, and the scapegoat needs to be more of a scapegoat, and everyone needs them to be a scapegoat, and the truth teller needs to be more of the truth teller, and everyone else gets to avoid telling the truth. Whereas healthy families, there will be roles, but there will be flexibility and overlapping of roles because everyone doesn't have to do a very rigid job for the entire system because they're all suffering.
I think it's alcohol induced. Do you ever look back at any of the interaction between you and Andrei or the family and think, why did I do that?
I mean,
I was a little too drunk.
In our family, isn't alcohol always involved?
Yes.
All right, so classic response from him. But I'll actually commend the sister for wording it the way that she did, because this family is not known for nuance, and she is trying to be diplomatic. And that would be something I might say to a client, to someone like Charlie, of just like, because you're thinking you have a massive problem with alcohol and you are refusing to acknowledge it. We have a lot of anecdotes to demonstrate that, but you don't say that because you're not going to get any kind of good response to that. So instead, she's more diplomatic, and she's like, have you ever woken up the next morning and thought, maybe I drank too much? Maybe my behavior was affected by my drinking? Has that ever happened? So it's an easier question for him to be like, well, maybe, but because if you're an alcoholic and you have such a need for alcohol and you have such a need to avoid any kind of implication that you have a problem, because as soon as you let that in, you have to question the whole thing, and then you have no way of knowing how to get out of that. People are helpless over their addictions. They need a huge system. They need a lot of support. And without that, they're just like, no. And so immediately he responds with, don't we all drink? I mean, look at you. He might even say, look at you, you're drinking right now. And it's just like, that's not what we're talking about.
A little too drunk.
In our family, isn't alcohol always involved?
Yes.
You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
So you're looking at just those times when we've had millions of great times together. That's the point I'm trying to make.
I think it was starting to become a little bit more, though. When you initially came to the barbecue and you came out and you said, call the cops, you don't feel like that was at all instigating the situation with Andrei?
How does he feel like he has...
So I'm worried they're going back to Andrei and trying to get back to that place, and he's the topic. It's easier to talk about someone that's not there. It's easier to talk about the scapegoat. It might even be their unconscious desire to get back to that place. I wouldn't be surprised if at the end of this conversation, they're all in agreement, or they're all in agreement that they're going to head back to that place of homeostasis where everything's returned to normal, and Andrei is the scapegoat. And this is what the family system wants. So it's interesting that before Charlie arrives, particularly the two sisters, they're like, we are not going to get wrapped up in the situation again. We're not going to get entangled again. We've made that mistake in the past, and so we're not going to do it this time. We reserve judgment. We're going to have some boundaries. They didn't say that directly, but they were basically indicating that. As soon as Charlie sits down and starts talking, they're going right back to it, right back to the arguing, right back to, if you had a family member like this and you were actually trying to establish a boundary and somehow you got cajoled into being at this birthday dinner, and Charlie and I was a little, therapist on your shoulder, I would say, do not be triangulated. Do not talk about Andrei. He's not here. That's just a classic triangulation. Talk about yourself. If that doesn't work, don't say anything, because when you engage with the toxic individual, then you are going down a road where you're going to get entangled again. And entanglements are revived with efforts to disentangle, if that makes sense. You go into it saying, I'm going to disentangle myself from this. But because you lack differentiation enough, which most people don't have that amount of it because it's really hard, and there's all these pressures and you haven't had the proper support, because I'm just going to take a guess and say the two sisters haven't been to Al-Anon enough at the very least. to be able to have a robust system, then you think I am establishing a boundary right now, but in reality, you're just slotting right back into the old system and you're going right back to the way things were.
I don't disagree with you about stuff like that.
I think you guys
There's
were
a lot
both in
that
the
I
wrong,
agree.
honestly, and I've said that before. I think you guys both handled it poorly.
You know, I think in order for Charlie to really improve is to admit, like, drinking too much or his outlandish behavior. So I don't know how it's going to be going forward.
Okay, good. So the sister they edited that pretty severely, but at least the way it looks is the sister is saying, she's returning to the foundation that it sounds like maybe she's at least absorbed some of Al-Anon's credo or other sort of professionals, or maybe she just knows anyway. And she's like, look, sounds like he's still not willing to admit that he has a problem with alcohol. And until he does, then we can't move forward, or I have to continue to protect myself, which is often what people will say. It's like, until he's ready to admit he has a problem, then why am I even trying? Because if he can't admit that to himself, and I've done what I can, and certainly life has done what it can to give him enough data so that he could actually say, maybe I have, just even the question mark of maybe I have a problem with alcohol, until he admits it to himself, there's nothing that we can do. That's all I can try to do is, from my distance place in his life, try to help him to see it. And I did my part. I was like, is it possible that maybe your drinking sometimes has negative consequences? And he became combative with me. And, he's certainly powerless over his addiction. I'm even more powerless over it. And clearly I am, because I gave it a shot and he just shot me down. So there's not a lot of hope of things changing until he admits he has a problem. And even if he did admit he had a problem, it would still be a long road of recovery, especially given his brand of issue, seemingly. The amount of anger, because sometimes what will happen is the individual will become sober, they will abstain, but they will become what they call a dry drunk, an angry addict, a rageaholic, and other kinds of issues. We could imagine that happening, right? And then you have to begin a whole other type of recovery, or a dual recovery from both your addiction and your emotional issues, which could take decades of time. So even if he did admit that he has a problem, it's just like, okay, great, now we're heading down a road, but it's not like it's over by any means.
There might be another crazy night.
I don't want to sit here and spend 2 hours talking about the past, because quite frankly, then I think it's better just to leave and then go spend our day separately.
Well, I mean, you weren't the one canceled by your family.
Nothing has been the same since that day at the barbecue for any of us.
I think there's one common denominator.
So he's canceled. Yeah, he's really trying hard to return to the Andre as the scapegoat, because if Andre is the scapegoat, then he is on the inside. He's on their side against the enemy, which is Andre. He wants to get back into that, and he's really trying to engineer that. And they were teetering on that. I mean, that's still there, but it's not as present as Charlie has an issue. So he's really trying to do that.
And it's not me, it's Andre. He fights with you, he fights with you, he fights with me, he fights with everybody.
I'm not saying that he's innocent at all. He's not.
I'm not going around trying to turn my family against other siblings. I'm not doing that.
He definitely has a big influence on Libby. We can all agree on that.
He does. Is Andrea a master manipulator? 100%.
Yeah.
Has he smelled blood in the water with Dad and picked up on it and wrapped around his finger? 100%.
I mean, I've been down this road before, but okay. So if that is even remotely true, they haven't shown us those data points, which is entirely possible. The show shows us what it wants to. It captures what it manages to capture. So who knows? But we have certainly seen no evidence of that. A master manipulator, Andre, master manipulator. He, was friendly with his father-in-law and has worked really hard. I assume has actually tried to work hard, and he's maybe developed skills beyond just destroying an innocent refrigerator. But who knows? But he's a master manipulator, and he's a horrible human being. Sure. So yeah, they seem to be going back to that zone. Because the thing is, for everyone at that table, it is so much more comfortable to scapegoat Andre than to deal with the real problem in the family. And I suspect that the scapegoating of Andre was partially in the very beginning, was partially to avoid Charlie's issues, but also Charlie's issues are probably a scapegoating of some even deeper problem in this family. I don't know. I don't want to be that kind of therapist that assumes that all the time, but that would be a typical story, a common story. So it's so much easier. It's a seduction of enmeshment. It just feels so much more comfortable. None of them have to fight, and they can celebrate, and they can all drink, and everything can be fine if they just all agree that Andre is this horrific, evil human being. Everything makes sense, and everything will go back to normal, and we can relax, and we can bond, and everything will be happy, and mom will be relaxed, and everything will be okay. We just have to, and then we'll believe that Libby is being abused and manipulated by Andre. So even though Libby's rejecting us, we can tell ourselves that it's because of Andre, not because Libby's actually differentiating from an enmeshed, a very unhealthy, toxic family. Everything will feel fine, and we can just get right back to the way things used to be.
Process everything that
Are
happened.
you guys cool with me again?
Charlie, you're our brother. We love you, period. Like, that's not going to change.
For the last year and a half, it didn't seem like that.
Yeah.
We're all from the same two parents.
Right.
The issues that we have, they're not unique. But we have to figure it out because we're a family. And if we don't figure it out, Andre is the kind of guy who will keep Libby from us.
Yeah.
Okay, so the beginning, I'm like, okay, so because the Charlie's and you just feel, I don't know, can you feel, I've been around this sort of thing so much as a therapist, you can just feel the pressure, with that the people who aren't talking, the things that are being said, he's being vulnerable. He's just like, oh, I felt like you guys didn't love me, and that's probably very true. And then the sister jumps in that's sitting next to him and says, no, we love you. Nothing will change that. The other sister says, yeah, that'll never change. But then the sister, the truth teller, is like, but that doesn't deny we're not going back to the way things were. But then she follows it with, so it's this weird, coming together of the dysfunction with the function, where it is, we have to, I think what she's saying is, we all agree that Andre is evil, like truly, truly evil. Evil, 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 evil. And we all agree that he's a master manipulator. And in order for us to not allow him to manipulate Libby away from us, we have to work on this, this smaller issue, which is your drinking or other issues in our family, so that we can truly win against Andre. You know what I mean? It's this meshing of these two things. And it's like, I think this is a transition place to going back to the way things were, and they're just scapegoating Andre, and everyone is glossing over the real problems.
He's already
And
threatening
she's going to
Mom.
let that happen?
She probably will, Charlie, because she's married to him, and she doesn't see it.
No.
I'm literally afraid that I'm gonna come a day where I don't get to talk to my sister.
Well, if it happened to me, it can happen to you.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm laughing, but I'm not. It's not funny. It's really quite tragic and sad and toxic. I mean, I really hope I'm not seeing it accurately. I really hope that, or I'm being fed a bunch of data that is making me believe something that just is not true. Because if this is representative of what's happening, and my hypothesis is even close to the mark, this is a very sad situation. This is a very, very tragic situation that goes back years, if not generations, of trauma and difficulty. And we're watching a family deal with something in their very typical way, in a very dysfunctional way that's very comfortable to them, but represents so much problems. And we could rewind the clock back a few decades and imagine that she and her siblings are children being subjected to probably a version of this among her parents and the aunts and uncles and grandparents. And now they've been indoctrinated into it, and they will do it for their children, and the cycle will just continue. It's a real sad state. You know, we can look at this and be like, ew, but when you zoom out and you look at the generations, it all makes sense. It's all been passed down, and it will be continued to pass down. And innocent children are going to suffer, and innocent children have already suffered.
I think my sisters are starting to realize that, you know, Andre is the problem. But I think they're scared to confront him and Libby because they don't want to be canceled. They don't want to be the next one.
Yeah, I mean, talk about master manipulation. Now, the system seemed quite open to the manipulation, but we went from the beginning of the dinner with at least the truth teller holding the line around Charlie to right back to the scapegoating of Andre. I mean, it's just a masterclass in enmeshed triangulation and scapegoating. I don't know if that's actually what's happening, but if I were teaching a class, the next time I teach a class, I will consider compiling these scenes and just showing it to my students and saying, who knows what's really happening, but this is representative of what you will see in your office, or you will be treating the Charlie or the Andre or the Libby or the other, you know, when you are, you know, imagine if Charlie went to therapy, or maybe in particular if that other sister, the truth teller, were to come into therapy. And as a therapist, you're hearing this narrative, and in order to help her, you'd have to understand the whole system and how the system operates. And sometimes you can make some pretty strong, educated guesses as to what's happening in the bigger system without assessing it directly because of the way the individual is talking. And if you are a therapist, I'm sure you know this, but just to remind us all that when we have individual clients, or really any client, but I think particularly individual clients, and they're telling us a narrative, we have to validate them as best we can and believe them and have empathy, but we also have to imagine what we would see if everyone was in the room. And it's very easy to be convinced of the narrative from the individual's narrative because we don't have the benefit of hearing from those other people. And if we're really going to help someone, we really have to be able to see the situation. And so, you know, you could imagine a therapist with the truth teller in therapy believing that Andre truly was an evil person, and that Charlie really isn't the issue, and that the family is great and close. Whereas when we see the situation, we might see something really quite different. All right, well, that does it for that episode. Everyone out there, please take care of yourself and take care of others, because we all deserve it. We really, really do.